Sometimes a court decision hits the headlines, maybe about someone famous, but the real story, the deeper impact, is actually hidden just beneath the surface.
Exactly, like a ripple effect starting small but potentially changing the whole pond.
Precisely. And we're seeing something like that now,
Well,
maybe, with a recent Supreme Court move that could, well, fundamentally reshape the power of arrest in India.
that's absolutely what we're digging into today. We're focusing on the Supreme Court of India's recent and I think quite pivotal look at arrests under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, the PMLA.
Right, the PMLA.
And we're using the Arvind Kejriwal versus Directorate of Enforcement case as sort of our main lens to understand this.
Okay. And for you listening, our sources are the official legal documents, the judgment itself, plus reputable news reports. Our goal, our mission, if you like, isn't just to recap what happened.
No, not at all.
We want you to really get the legal principles at play here, the deeper meaning for how courts review arrests, especially under these really powerful laws.
Yeah, because okay, yes, it involves a very high-profile political figure, the truly fascinating part, I think, is the set of legal questions the Supreme Court itself has put on the table.
Questions that could lead to some really significant, maybe even landmark rulings down the line?
Potentially, yes. It's setting the stage for something quite important.
Okay, let's get into the specifics. The case name.
Arvind Kejriwal v. Directorate of Enforcement, Criminal Appeal number 2493 of 2024.
And the judgment we're really focusing on today came down on July 12th, 2024.
That's right, from a two-judge bench, Justices Sanjeev Khanna and Dipankar Datta.
So July 12th, what actually happened, he was granted bail, right?
He was, yes, interim bail. Specifically in the PMLA case tied to the Delhi liquor excise policy investigation. But, and this is the crucial but,
There's always a but in these complex cases.
there usually is. The really big move was what the bench didn't decide definitively. They granted the bail, but they reserved the core question.
Reserve what exactly?
The question of whether his initial arrest itself was legal, whether it met the requirements under Section 19 of the PMLA.
Section 19.
Yeah,
That's the bit that gives the Enforcement Directorate the power to arrest.
precisely. It lays out the conditions like having reason to believe based on material and possession. The court basically said, we're granting interim relief now, but the fundamental legality of this arrest, that needs a deeper look.
And who's taking that deeper look?
They referred it to a larger bench.
Okay, a larger bench, meaning more judges.
Yes, typically 3 or more. It usually signals that the issue is constitutionally significant, or there might be conflicting precedents, or it's just a really substantial legal question that needs broader consensus.
So the bail is sort of conditional pending this larger bench decision on the arrest itself. It wasn't a clean chit on the arrest procedure.
Not at all. The release was provisional. It was focused on the immediate liberty aspect while deferring the judgment on the arrest's validity. It really separates the bail decision from the final verdict on the arrest process.
Got it. So what were the grounds for granting even this interim bail? What did the judges emphasize?
Well, a key theme was judicial scrutiny. The court made it really clear that arrests under PMLA, even with its stringent provisions, aren't immune from rigorous examination by the courts.
They can't just be automatic then.
Exactly. The judges stressed that procedural safeguards under Section 19 must be strictly followed, and courts have a duty to scrutinize whether they actually were. It's a strong statement about checks and balances.
It feels like they're pushing back against any idea that these are sort of, executive decisions beyond question.
I think that's a fair reading. They also highlighted something quite specific, this concept of the need and necessity to arrest.
Yes, I saw that mentioned. That sounds distinct from just checking the procedural boxes of Section 19.
It is. The bench pointed out that just needing to interrogate someone isn't by itself enough reason to arrest them under PMLA.
So convenience isn't justification.
Correct. An arrest requires sufficient recorded reasons. It can't just be for, say, investigative expediency. This need and necessity test seems to add another layer. Is the arrest proportionate? Is it truly required at that specific moment, considering all circumstances?
It goes beyond just, can we arrest, to should we arrest?
Precisely. It introduces this element of justification beyond the bare statutory power. And they explicitly tied his interim release to this uncertainty, saying he should be out until the larger bench clarifies these very points about the arrest's validity and this necessity test.
Okay, that makes sense. So this referral to the larger bench isn't just a procedural step. It comes with specific homework, basically.
Definitely. The two-judge bench framed quite precise questions for the larger bench.
Like what? What are they asking this bigger panel to figure out?
Well, first, Is this need and necessity idea a standalone legal ground? Can you challenge an arrest just based on necessity, separate from other Section 19 criteria?
Okay, that's fundamental.
Second, does this necessity concept cover just the formal rules in the law, or does it also include, broader circumstances, the whole context?
The bigger picture of the situation.
Right. And third, and perhaps most practically, what actual parameters or guidelines should courts use when they're assessing this necessity? How do you measure it?
So they're asking for a clearer rule book, essentially.
Exactly. These questions are clearly aimed at setting clearer standards for all future PMLA arrests, not just this one case. It's about defining the boundaries of the state's power.
Right. Now, to really get the weight of this July 12th decision, it helps to remember the context, the timeline leading up to it. It wasn't the first time bail came up, was it?
No, not at all. It's been quite a journey. He was first arrested by the ED under PMLA back on March 21st, 2024.
Marshall Arthurs. Okay.
Then, you might remember, the Supreme Court actually granted him a different interim bail earlier on May 10th. But that was specifically time-bound just for the election campaigning period, lasting until June 1st.
Right, I remember that. That was purely for the elections.
Correct. And then between May and June, things got even more complicated. There was that whole back and forth.
Oh, yeah, the sort of legal ping pong?
Kind of. The trial court granted him regular bail in a related matter. Then the high court quickly put that on hold, stayed it.
Before he could even get out, wasn't it?
That's right. And then while that was happening, the CBI arrested him again on June 26th in connection with other related cases stemming from the same core allegations.
So it's a complex web of cases and legal challenges.
Very much so. All that activity leads us up to this key date, July 12th, 2024. That's when this two-judge bench stepped in, granted this fresh interim bail in the PMLA case, and made that crucial referral about the arrest's legality to the larger bench.
Okay, so placing it in that timeline really highlights the significance. It wasn't just another routine bail hearing.
Far from it. It shows the continuous judicial engagement and the evolving nature of the arguments.
So let's talk about the broader significance then. If we zoom out from the specifics of this one case, what are the big takeaways for how the legal system works, particularly with laws like PMLA?
I think the most powerful message is the reinforcement of judicial review. It strongly affirms that even under a law as stringent as the PMLA, which has faced criticism for its tough provisions.
Yes, it's often seen as very potent.
Even then, the power of arrest isn't absolute. Courts will scrutinize the process, demanding not just formal compliance with Section 19, but also considering this crucial element of necessity.
So to check on power, it reinforces that procedures and justifications matter, even when dealing with serious allegations like money laundering.
Absolutely. It's drawing a line saying the how matters just as much as the what.
And what about the role of interim bail here?
Well, it shows interim bail isn't just, a temporary fix. It can be a really important provisional remedy. It allows the court to protect an individual's liberty while these fundamental, potentially precedent-setting questions about the law itself are being properly considered by a higher judicial authority, like the larger bench.
So it bridges the gap while waiting for clarity.
Exactly. And connecting this to the bigger picture, this whole situation, the bail, the reserved questions, the referral, it really opens the door for potentially landmark rulings.
Rulings that could redefine the arrest standards under PMLA for everyone.
That's the potential impact, yes. It could clarify the rules of engagement for the state when using these significant powers.
Okay, so where do things stand right now as we're talking?
Well, Mr. Kejriwal is currently out on the interim bail, granted by that two-judge bench on July 12th.
And the next major event?
The next big step is really the constitution of that larger bench by the Supreme Court, and then for them to take up these referred questions about Section 19 and the necessity test.
And are there any immediate challenges to his current bail?
As of now, specifically for this PMLA case bail granted on July 12th, there aren't any active cancellation attempts pending before the Supreme Court. But it's crucial to remember the other related cases are still proceeding in the trial courts. The legal situation remains complex.
Right. But the spotlight, in terms of major legal principle, is now firmly on that larger bench and those fundamental questions about arrest.
Absolutely. That's where the potentially system-wide implications lie.
So wrapping this up, what really stands out is, I think, the court's strategy here. Granting interim relief, yes, but using this specific case, this moment, to deliberately focus attention on these huge foundational questions about arrest powers.
Yeah, it's quite skillful, moving beyond the individual circumstances to address principles that affect everyone, justice, liberty, the limits of state power under laws like the PMLA.
It really elevates the discussion.
It does, and it leaves us and you listening with something important to think about.
Which is
Just how critical is that role of the judiciary? Balancing the state's genuine need to investigate serious crime against the individual's fundamental right to liberty, especially when the very definition of necessity for an arrest is up for debate.
That's a tightrope walk, isn't it?
It really is. And consider this. What are the long-term implications when a country's highest court starts questioning the very grounds for arrest under a major law? Could it set a whole new standard for accountability, not just for this law, but potentially others too?
A really profound thought to reflect on as this legal chapter continues to unfold. Something for all of us to keep watching.
Indeed.
Okay, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another look at key developments.